Hello there! Today we'll be talking about the story of Odyssey and the low arts. So let us start. So the summary of the Odyssey is the Odyssey tells the story of a heroic but far from perfect protagonist who battles many antagonists, including his own inability to heed the gods' warnings on his arduous journey home from war. Along the way, poem explores about fate, retribution, and the forces of civilization versus savagery. While the Odyssey is not told chronologically or from single perspective, the poem is organized around a single goal: Odysseus' return to his homeland of Ithaca, where he will defeat the rude suitors, camp his palace, and reunite and his loyal wife, Penelope. Odysseus, motivated chiefly by his nostos, or desire for homecoming, a notion in heroic culture, and encouraged bravery in war, reminding warriors of the people, institutions they were fighting from back home. Odysseus' return represent the traditions from life as a warrior on the battlefield back to life as a husband, father, and head of a household. Therefore, Odysseus is ultimately motivated by a desire to reclaim these elements of this identity and once again become the person he was before he left for the Trojan War so many years earlier.
In the Odyssey Summary Part 2 by Video SparkNotes, Odysseus was in front of King Alcinous in the island of Phaeacia, where he was welcomed and taken care of. He was also invited to participate in their tradition of sports and feasting. During that time, King Alcinous did not believe that he is the real Odysseus of the legends that were told, because they do not know where he is. They all knew the gods had punished him and made him lose his way back home. When the king asked him to tell his story, Odysseus told his story and started with the island of the Cyclops, Polyphemus, who he didn't know is the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea. He and his men went inside the cave where Polyphemus lives and found a lot of things that were necessary for them, like food and clothing, that they could bring on their journey back home. While they were gathering the things, Polyphemus the Cyclops came home and saw Odysseus and his men inside. Polyphemus asked who they are, and Odysseus introduced himself as nobody. He asked him for a trade of food and clothing for his men to bring home, but instead of showing his good nature, the Cyclops took two of Odysseus's men and ate them right in front of him. They were all shocked and afraid. All of them tried to hide from the Cyclops to spare their lives, but there was no way to run since Polyphemus blocked the cave with a giant boulder. During the night, Polyphemus ate two more of Odysseus's men until he fell asleep. During his slumber, Odysseus and his men plan to escape by blinding the Cyclops so that they can escape to their boats. Odysseus came while the Cyclops slept and he pierced him in his eye. Polyphemus screamed and begged for Odysseus and his men to stop. His scream was so loud that the other Cyclops heard him. When the other Cyclops came to his door, they asked him if he was hurt or if someone is hurting him. Polyphemus screamed, "Nobody is hurting me." So the other Cyclops replied with, "Are you sure?" And Polyphemus replied, "Yes, nobody is hurting me." Upon hearing his reply, the other Cyclops left him alone. When Odysseus blinded him, the Cyclops felt hopeless, so he pushed over that boulder that was blocking the entrance, but he would not allow Odysseus and his men to escape. Polyphemus guarded the entrance of the cave, so whoever comes out, he will feel them. Odysseus told his men to tie themselves to the underbelly of Polyphemus's flock of goats and sheep, so that when Polyphemus feels it, he will only feel the hair of the goats or sheep. Odysseus and his men successfully managed to escape the cave of the Cyclops with the things they need for the journey back home. Before that, Odysseus told Polyphemus his true name and that the one who blinded him is Odysseus of Ithaca. Polyphemus prayed to his father Poseidon to destroy Odysseus and his men because of what they did to him. Poseidon heard his prayer and sent a big storm to destroy the ships and Odysseus' men. That is why he ended up in the island of King Alcinous. After he tells his story, the king believed him and felt sorry for him because of what he had gone through. So the king sent him on his way back to his homeland of Ithaca.
So, the climax of the poem happens after Odysseus has left Phaeacia and has returns to Ithaca, where his story merges with Telemachus, and father and son are reunited to face one final obstacle. They go to the castle with Odysseus disguised as a beggar, echoing his actions during the Trojan Wars and enabling them to test the loyalty and values of their countrymen. The suitors abuse Odysseus rather than extending hospitality, essentially after their doom, and reinforcing the importance of host-guest relationship in the poem. After several suitors fail, Penelope's challenge to shoot arrows through 12 axe handles. Odysseus strings his bow and accomplishes with ease, proving not only that he is rightful husband of Penelope, but that he has still the warrior of strength and agility. Odysseus and Telemachus killed suitors and the servant reconciling Odysseus' former evolutions into a brave and decisive leader. In the poem's failing action, Odysseus is reunited with his wife and father, and poem concludes the Athena erasing the suitors' parents' memory of the battle, restoring peace of Ithaca. So Odysseus' heroic qualities are strength, courage, and dignity, a thirst for glory and self-confidence. He's also shrewd and ingenious, all of which make him the ideal hero in both the physical form and the spiritual aspects. Odysseus, being faithful and loyal to his wife, shows his dignity.
I would describe Penelope's character to be patient and full of hope and faith that her husband Odysseus will come home even after 20 years. I would rather be Penelope because she's a patient and caring woman, and she's also smart. She was able to outwit her suitors for years without marrying them.
So for me, I'd rather be with Odysseus because hero frame of his intellect and cunning. He created the plan to sack of the city of Troy using giant hollow horse. He's most famous for his long Odysseys or journey, trying to return home the events of the Trojan War. Odysseus is one of the most well-known of early Greek heroes.
According to the website LitCharts, in the first chapter of the novel The Low Art, it shows how Penelope quote-unquote died waiting for her husband to come home. She then begins to describe the afterlife, stating that everyone who arrives in the underworld arrives in a quote-unquote sack full of words. Penelope states that her own sack is full of words about her husband, and some say that her husband made a fool out of her. She remains a faithful wife to him even if he is tricky and also lies to her. Bitterly, Penelope thinks that all she was amounted to was a quote-unquote stick used to beat other women with, since all of the storytellers considered her to be a faithful wife. Instead, she pretended not to know about Odysseus' tricks and lies because she quote-unquote wanted happy endings. Penelope then realized how many people were laughing at her, making jokes about her, and making fun of her. Penelope decides that it is her turn to make her own story, regardless of how the public may take it. Even if nobody will listen, she is still determined to tell her side of the story.
So let's talk about the low art analysis. So low art refers to an art meant for the cases such as decorative art, which serves the purpose of utility as well. Art is regarded as mere entertainment without any aesthetic values, but the difference between high art and low art is diminishing in contemporary world.
A reflection of the low art for me is basically it shows us how important different perspectives are. It shows us how easily people can change the narrative to fit what other people want them to believe. It tells us how we should let our voices be heard and how we should stand up for what is right. It focuses on how women were oppressed in the past and how their voices weren't heard and they weren't able to express their opinions or what they truly felt. They also didn't have the right to do anything and or decide for themselves. This novel teaches us how women should be treated fairly among men as well. That's all for this report. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and turn on the notification bell to get notified whenever a new video is uploaded. Bye-bye!